Hola, and welcome in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains. I'm your host, Keenan Cummings of WVSports.com. I serve as the managing editor for the site. We talk a lot of West Virginia football on here, and I've got my sidekick.
Yeah, I'm Serre, staff writer. I am the Robin to Keenan's Batman.
I like it. It's coming together nice. We got Jared on the team about a month or two ago, something around in there.
Yeah,
and it's been growing. We're building some chemistry here on the podcast. We're having fun with it, and we're putting out a lot of great content. I do want you, before we jump into anything, we have a great promo. It ends today. Jump on board. 50% off, and for a whole year annual subscription, and you can get free for 60 days. So free is good. Free is always good. Get top-notch WV coverage, join our message board, and get a lot of discussion from a lot of West Virginia fans. Sometimes a little wild, sometimes a little off topic, but never not entertaining. West Virginia plays a football game this weekend. Played one last weekend. I think West Virginia would like some retribution in a sense. Did not play well. A lot of credit to Oklahoma State. You go back and watch that game. They did a lot of things right. West Virginia certainly didn't help itself, and they are not good enough at this point to win a football game when they aren't helping themselves. Baylor. What do we know about this Baylor football team? Well, they have a new coach, Dave Aranda, come over from LSU. They got two coordinators that both were previous head coaches, Larry Fedora on offense. Expect a high-tempo attack. They've got an experienced quarterback in Charlie Brewer, a stable of running backs, some pretty good wide receivers. They lost Denzel Mims, but they still have some talent there. And an offensive line that, while last year struggled, this year is one of the more veteran on the team. When you look at this game, what do you kind of see standing out as a matchup you want to watch?
Yeah, I'm very high on, Baylor defense is, obviously they've only played one game, but I'm very high on Dave Aranda. Dave Aranda, while he is no longer the D coordinator, he's the head coach. Dave Aranda is by far one of the top defensive minds in college football, and he has been for a long time. I look back last week, albeit it's a not very good Kansas team. Baylor beat the Jayhawks. I believe it was 47-14 or something like that. And the Bears defense only held running back Puka Williams to about around 70, 75 yards rushing for the game. And that's huge. That's Puka Williams. And I think anybody who covers Big 12 football would agree that Puka Williams is head and shoulders better than what West Virginia has to offer in the run game. I think this will truly be a battle defensively with the success that Baylor will have. I think they're very slept on.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, what is this Baylor football team? They've only played one game. They had two games canceled by COVID, weren't able to play them. They played last week against Kansas, which, yes, you could argue that maybe Les Miles is starting to turn things around a little bit there, but still, come on, it's Kansas. They're one of the worst football teams in FBS. So I don't know how much you can take away from what Baylor was able to, steamroll the Jayhawks. So we're going to find out a little bit about this team. I keep saying that on this show, but in a season where there's no off season, there's one out of conference game, we really don't know a lot about these football teams. The thing that we do know about Baylor is Charlie Brewer. Nothing to do with Neil Brown and his brother, recruiting his brother to Texas Tech. That's talked about a lot. He recruited his brother, Michael Brewer. But he's a talented quarterback. West Virginia actually recruited him. They didn't go all in, but they recruited him some when he was out of high school. Athletic kid, can move around the pocket, tough. He doesn't necessarily do anything great, but does everything well. One of those players that just doesn't make a lot of mistakes, can extend the pocket with his feet, can hurt you scrambling, and makes the throws. West Virginia's – this will be the fourth time, I believe, going up against him, and it'll be interesting to see how West Virginia fares. He didn't really have to do a lot last week for them to win that football game. So it'll be interesting to see how West Virginia is able to frustrate him, how they're able to affect him. Last week it was hard for West Virginia to get pressure because Oklahoma State was playing 6, 7-man fronts. They were blocking, they were protecting, and their quarterback was getting the ball out quick. I'll be interested to see how they attack this week and kind of how things change. Defensively, Baylor's an experienced team, and they've got some good players. They lost a lot up front from last year, but they do have a lot of players, especially their linebacker, Bernard. a very talented player. West Virginia is going to be challenged. I don't know how good this Baylor defense is. I mean, obviously Kansas got 14 points, but we'll see how West Virginia is able to consistently move the ball. I have been personally very pleased with what West Virginia has done in the run game. I did not expect that big of a turnaround. I know, 100 yards, you're just barely getting it, but that's a big turnaround for what West Virginia was able to do last year. The interior of the line's getting pushed. They're targeted upright. They're moving people. It's not perfect. They've had mistakes, but they are actually effectively running the football in short yard situations, which did that happen at any point last year? Yeah, I don't think it did either. So there is some positives here. West Virginia 5-3 all time against Baylor. Never lost in Morgantown to Baylor. They have controlled the series on that front, and this will be an interesting game because usually the crowd is always such a big factor in these games. They won't be there. No fans in the stands. That will return against Kansas. So it'll be interesting, to take a look at how Baylor plays this football game. They're the more experienced of the two teams. They're favored coming into this game, albeit, a small margin, but they are favored. But West Virginia's at home, and I think West Virginia has a lot to prove. When it comes to predictions here, I went first last week. Who do you have, Jared?
See, I've thought about this for a while, and we're filming this right now, and honestly, I still don't know. I mean, but first and foremost, though, I want to call out everybody on the blue lot who yelled at Keenan and I for saying that it would be a close West Virginia win, when in fact West Virginia was blown out. You can message me and Keenan. We'll accept your apologies through the end of the week, but. When it comes to Baylor, West Virginia, I am extremely high on Dave Aranda. As I touched on, he is a phenomenal defensive mind. This might be a weird comparison, but he strikes me a lot like Mike Zimmer in the NFL in the sense of a longtime defensive coordinator who saw a lot of success and then finally got his turn as a head coach. So they've got Aranda. I think Charlie Brewer is definitely already in the top tier of Big 12 quarterbacks, but I think he is still definitely extremely underrated. Alluding back to what Keenan said, this is not a team in Baylor that we know a whole lot about, but I think Baylor comes out with a win here. I'm not one to stick with scores, but I think this could be a close one, maybe a one possession, one score game. But I do think Baylor has the edge in this one heading into Saturday.
Ooh, you're making no friends on the blue lot, man. You're making no friends at all.
Hey,
we are not paid to make homer picks.
Yeah, when they start signing my checks, maybe I'll sway another way. But
I think I'm going to go against you this week. I agree with you last week. I thought West Virginia was going to lose the game on the road. I do think that they had a chance to win that game and really kind of just could not get out of their own way. I don't think that happens this week. I think West Virginia comes home. I do think this is a highly competitive game. The way I see it, I think 28-24, West Virginia is able to come out with a win. It's going to be a tough game. They're going to have to play mistake-free football and really kind of keep a check on what Baylor could do offensively because they have a lot of good playmakers. Tristan Ebner, I think, is their second or third team running back, and guy's electric with the ball in his hands. So I think that West Virginia is going to find a way to win. It's not going to be pretty, but it's going to make people feel a lot better in Morgantown. Singing country roads. We won't be in the stadium doing it, but singing country roads, having a good time. I think this is a way for West Virginia to write their season. It's said every year that Maryland game is sort of that litmus test, that measuring stick to see what kind of season West Virginia is. It's usually about the third game of the year. Here we are, West Virginia, third game of the year against a Baylor team that has questions, a West Virginia team that has questions. You're at home. You got to try to win these football games, and I think West Virginia does find a way to do that. Quickly, shifting gears real fast, I'd be remiss to not mention the fact that West Virginia is one of 3 teams in the country, the entire country, that have a pair of 4-star running backs in the recruiting class. Mountaineers added Justin Johnson Sunday night, a major commitment, 4-star guy, Rivals 250 guy. West Virginia's been involved with him from the start. If you followed this program for a while, we've talked about him ad nauseum. I think that he is going to be an interesting piece. You know, him and Jalen Anderson are very similar. Can run inside, outside. Both can catch the ball well, and really just kind of add to what West Virginia wants to do on that side of the ball with running backs. You can't just have one guy anymore. I mean, you got to have more than one guy. And when you bring another guy in, there better not be a significant drop off in skills. He fits that. The other two schools, if you're wondering, Ohio State and Clemson. Anytime you're mentioned with those two schools in recruiting, it's a positive. But thank you for tuning in again. I hope you enjoy the game Saturday. We'll be back as usual with some reaction afterwards, as well as a preview next week. But thanks for tuning in again to another edition of Musings from the Mountains.